Okay, so today we're going to talk about the framework that we're going to use to organize all the information when it comes down to our new business development plan. Okay, so this is kind of like an overarching scaffolding that is going to hopefully help us organize all the information uh, and also make sure that we don't forget important aspects of the business that will have an impact when we're actually developing our ideas. Okay, now. This presentation, as you're going to see, is going to be deceivingly simple because there is only one slide, right? So the whole model, the whole business canvas model, is essentially one slide. And what this is trying to do is it's trying to capture all the elements that are within the business that play a key role in making sure that the business as a business model actually works, okay? And it kind of acknowledges the fact that everything is interrelated. Okay, so today I'm going to put emphasis particularly in the two aspects that you guys are going to be doing most of the work for the first part or for the first presentation that you guys have to. But I'm also going to touch upon the other aspects so that you see what's coming in the next few weeks. Okay, and maybe because I'm a marketing guy, we're going to start with the customers, right? And I will argue, if you were paying attention to the first lecture we did about what a business is about value creation, okay? And value creation for who? For your customer. If you don't understand who your customer is, it is very difficult to do a good job in providing either a product or a service that is going to satisfy their needs above and beyond what's already in the marketplace. And because of that, they will not come. Right? Now, within customers, what we're going to do is we're going to make a distinction between different groups of customers, and we're going to call these groups segments. Okay, so a segment is essentially a group of customers that are fairly similar in their needs or wants. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to try to have a very clear profile of who our customer is. And this is something that I already asked you guys to do for your first presentation. Okay, have a profile or a description, a detailed description of who your customer is. You can use demographics for this, right? That's fine. Demographics will be things like age or gender, maybe geographic location might be actually useful, especially depending on the kind of business that you're trying to create and how important or difficult it is to get those goods and services to other people if they are far away, right? That could be a consideration. But also when you're thinking about segments, think about other things like behaviors, right? Think about interest, right? What kind of things do they like to do, right? What kind of activities do they usually get engaged in? Okay, so have a very rich and detailed description of your ideal customer. You could have multiple segments, but I would suggest when you're starting a business, you need to start with a segment one, okay, with your ideal segment and build from there. You can also have secondary segments at a later time. But I will argue if you don't have an ideal segment to start with, it's very hard to build your business, okay? And then the second part that you're going to be working on the most right now that is clearly associated with this description of value that I'm making right now is this idea of a value proposition. And a value proposition essentially is, why is this product or service uniquely valuable for this particular segment or customer? So like I was saying before, these two things are going to be intertwined. If you do not know who you are selling something to, it's very hard to make a good proposition to them, okay? And remember, when you're talking about the value proposition, you need to consider both the benefits, right? The benefits that the product provides, that will be the positive aspect of value, right? But there is also cost. And when I'm talking about cost, I'm not talking only about dollars. Cost, it could be, for example, how easy or hard it is to use the product, how easy or difficult it is to attain it or get to it, etc. Right? So when you get a new, I don't know, electronic gadget, right? If you need to spend 30 minutes browsing or reading through the instruction manual so that you can figure out how to turn it on, that's going to deter from the value proposition of that product, okay? So these two aspects, I will argue, are the absolutely most essential when you're starting to coming up with a business. Later on, everything else matters, but if you do not have a clear segment that is your ideal market and you do not know how your product benefits that segment above and beyond what's in the competition or other options that they have, you're already dead in the ground. No? Now, how are you going to get this product or service to your customers? The answer is using different channels of distribution. And we will deal with this at a later point. I think chapter 12 is when we're going to talk a little bit about channels. And channels is any touch point directly that you have with your final consumer of the product. Okay, and this could be things like, you know, you have a physical store that enables you to get those products to your customers, like Apple, for example, has their own retail stores, or it could be other channels of distribution, like, for example, online. You can see how well Amazon has been doing with the whole COVID fiasco, right? Because now people maybe are more reluctant to go to stores, so maybe you're better off if you have more digital presence in this particular situation that we encounter ourselves. And then another aspect that is related to the combination of these two value propositions and customer service is the idea of building a relationship with your customers. Why are we talking about this? Because you're not trying to sell a product or a service one time. Okay, if that's the only thing you do, in the long term, you're not going to be unsuccessful, right? What you want to do is you want to make sure that people come back over and over again to buy your product or your service. And the only way that's going to happen is if you are providing value that is beyond what they are getting from other offerings, okay? So you're going to have to come up with some way of getting these people to come back. And for that, you're going to have to share some of the value. You can't keep it all for yourself. Right? We'll talk about that when we talk about revenue streams a little bit more. Okay, and you'll see hopefully how those two are related. There are more things that you're going to need, right? You're going to need some key resources, right? How are you going to provide this value? Well, you're probably going to need some capital, like we talked about, right? So that means you're going to have to go to the bank maybe and get some funds so that you can run your operations. Maybe you can rent a space where you can do whatever it is that you want to do, and et cetera, et cetera. So what kind of key resources do you need? You know, depending on the market that you're trying to tap into, there may be some things that are absolutely essential, right? So maybe a brand is necessary, right? Then you're going to have to build a new brand, right? Or maybe you need to acquire an old brand that nobody's using right now, right? Maybe if you're not a startup, you have the funds to do that, right? So what are the key resources? What things do you need that without you're not going to be able to get the business off the ground? Right, capital will be one of them. Another one that you might need is to hire people that have specific skill sets, right? So, for example, if you want to do your channels online, you might need a webmaster, somebody that can actually manage your online channels, and maybe you need industry connections. I mean, there might be different things. It could be also specific information that you need. Maybe you need a patent, right? These are the key resources without which you're not going to get off the ground. Okay. Good. What else? Some of those resources are actually not going to be owned by you, but you're going to establish a relationship with partners that are going to enable you to get those resources. What kind of partners will you have as a business? Well, at least you're going to have your suppliers, right? Suppliers are going to be companies that are going to provide you with either goods or services that you need to operate, right? So let's say that you want to make a restaurant, right? Well, for a restaurant, you're going to have a way of getting the primary ingredients that you're going to need to make your recipes, right? So maybe, I don't know, some of those suppliers will be locally sourced. There might be others that are not. So you're going to need suppliers that provide you the goods and services that you need. What kind of services you might need? I don't know. Maybe you have a phenomenal restaurant, but you don't know anything about accounting, right? So you might need an accountant that provides you services. That would be one of your partners, right? Partners also could be in the channel. So these two things could actually be interlinked. So your channel might not be owned by you, but it might be operated by a different company. Like, for example, if you are a company like Procter & Gamble that makes, for example, Gillette products, if you like shaving, right? Gillette doesn't sell products directly to you and me. They use a channel. For example, they use stores like Target or Walmart, right? So some of your key partners might be in the channel of distribution, okay? And on and on. This depends on the industry. We'll talk some more as we go. Then there is going to be certain key activities, right? Things that you're going to have to finish or complete before you can actually operate, right? So first, if you're starting a new business, you might have to write let's say that you are doing a partnership as a form of organization, you're going to have to write the articles of incorporation, right? So you're going to have to write the rules by which that particular partnership it's going to be established by. Going to have to file some paperwork with the state, like we mentioned. And then maybe you're going to have to get that capital that you need, and then, I don't know, maybe you're going to have to get a location, and then after the location, you're going to have to hire some personnel. There's going to be a set of activities that you're going to have to undertake to make sure that actually you can get off the ground, and after you get off the ground, so the company's working properly, right? And finally, after you've talked about these elements, let me discuss briefly the ones at the bottom. Revenue streams, this is how you're going to monetize the value that you're generating. Remember, we were talking here about creating some value for customers, right, through your value proposition, okay? Now notice, if you keep all the value that you generate and you don't leave any of that value for your customers, they will not keep coming. So as revenue stream, you're going to have to think, how am I going to make money? Am I going to make money by charging price for the product? Or am I going to get that revenue through other means? So as you very well know, if you, for example, play video games in your phone, there are a lot of video games that are free to play. What does that mean? Well, that means that the price is zero, so you're not getting your revenue stream through that price, but maybe you're getting your revenue stream through advertising. So maybe there are some ads that play before you can, continue with the game. Or maybe there are no ads, but maybe what you're doing is you're providing somebody else the information from these people that are playing your game, right? So maybe you need to sign up, you need to provide your demographics, they create a profile about what you do, and then, they can give somebody else your information, like maybe Amazon, so that they can sell you other things, right? So there are different ways of building revenue streams. These are ways of monetizing that value that you're creating. And having eyeballs on your product is valuable, okay? You need to understand that. So it's not only the price, there are other ways of getting money. And then finally, and we're gonna close with this, it's gonna be cost structure. So after you understand, especially all the key activities that you're gonna have to undertake, right? And the key resources that you're gonna need, then with this, you're gonna be able to get a good idea about how much it's gonna cost you to be able to run the business, right? And you're gonna have some fixed cost. We'll talk about that. Those are things that don't change with the amount of amount of product that you create or amount of services. What do I mean by this? For example, rent, if you have a location like an office, right? It doesn't matter how much product you make, right? And the amount you're gonna have to pay for the rent is the same. Same thing for a factory, right? On the other hand, you're gonna have some variable costs. These are costs that are gonna change with the amount of units that you produce, right? So if we're talking about a restaurant, right? So for every, let's say that you make, I don't know, 10 burritos, right? So every burrito is gonna require you to buy tortillas, it's gonna require you to buy some sort of meat, maybe vegetables, some rice, probably beans, right? So all those costs are gonna be variable, and the more burritos you make, the more of cost you're going to have, right? And once that you understand this too, this is gonna help you to some degree set your pricing. We'll talk about that in the end. So as you can see, hopefully I've done a decent job highlighting that this single slide has a lot of information about how the business actually works. In a lot of these different buckets that we have in here that you need to think about throughout the course, throughout our 7 weeks. They are intertwined with each other. They are not independent. They relate to each other, and there is a reason for how this information or why this information is organized the way it is. Now, for the first presentation, what I want you to do, let me see if I can erase most of it quickly. There's not a quick way of erasing as far as I know. Okay, so what I really want you to focus on is the first 2 buckets that I discussed. What you need to do is you need to take your 3 or 4 ideas that you created through our little ideation workshop, okay? And I want you to focus on these 2 buckets. I want you to have a very clear idea of who your ideal customer is, okay? What are their pains and what are their preferences? What do they like? What do they care about, right? And then building on that, how are you going to offer them exceptional value? And by exceptional, I mean above and beyond in some way than what is already available in the marketplace. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking, but it needs to have something else different. Otherwise, you're going to be second choice, right? So, value proposition. And when you're thinking about your value proposition, think about both the plus side, which is how are you better, but also think about if there are any negatives, right? Okay. So that you can balance these two out. Okay. And that's really what you need to do at this point for your presentation. Hope that this was useful. Get on with it.